Welcome to the Diary of an Apartment Investor podcast. I'm your host, Brian Briscoe with Streamline Capital, and very happy to have today's guest on the show. Really excited for it today. We've got Jered Sturm with us. So, Jered, how's it going today?
It's going really good. I congratulated you off of recording on almost getting to 500 episodes and happy
Thank
to
you.
be part of that journey and appreciative
Yeah.
to you and anyone else who's in the background editing and preparing these episodes. Super grateful for the platform.
Thanks a lot. And yeah, that 500 milestone is coming up quickly. I ought to make sure I pay attention to that so I can get some good social media traction on it. But yeah, so very much appreciate it. And then, talking with you before, I learned something really, really cool. You bought your first property at 18 years old, right?
Yep.
Dude,
Yeah.
that's awesome. So tell you what, let's just launch in there. 18-year-old Jered. I'm imagining, fresh out of high school, maybe in college, but tell us kind of where you were and what possessed you to buy a property at age 18. And when I say possessed, I mean that in the best possible way, by the way.
Yeah, I'll go back even maybe a little bit before because people
Mhm.
might ask the question like, how did you have enough money to buy a house at 18? So in high school, I was a maintenance tech for another local landlord here in my market, which is Cincinnati, Ohio. So I was the guy, fixing up the apartments, changing the toilets, hanging the blinds, doing whatever was necessary. My high school had a program senior year where I could work full time as long as I had the credit. So I signed up for that and participated. So, I was making decent money as a maintenance tech, working full time, living at home, having zero expenses, and was able to save up enough money to put low down payment down on a house, which was a 6 bedroom house. Me and my brother bought it together. We lived in
Yeah.
two of the bedrooms and rented out the other four.
Okay.
And really, Brian, there was not much sophistication when it came to why we were buying this house. It was because it had a 30 by 50 detached garage that we could then run our, handyman and construction company out of that garage.
Mm-hmm.
But it ended up being a good choice. And we lived there for 5 years and started our journey in that home.
Awesome. Well, hey, congratulations on that. I mean, when I was 18, I had aspirations to do stuff like that, and my friends and I talked about doing stuff like that. But anyway, good on you for actually taking action. It's exactly what I wanted to do, but I was like, I don't know how to do that. I think I was too scared or too worried about things going wrong. But anyway, good on you for jumping straight in. So 18, you buy this 6 bedroom. Now, did you actually run this handyman business out of that garage for a while?
Yes, yeah. So, I mean, it was just me and my brother. We didn't have employees, but we left the maintenance tech role behind and we were just doing more like kitchens, bathroom remodels, putting additions on people's homes. And you may ask the question, like, how did you learn to do that? We would always just say yes and figure it out along the way.
Yep.
And we had a natural aptitude towards the trades,
Mhm.
which actually makes me want to bring up something because you told me about your audience and, being 18, coming out of high school, me and my brother were both not good academic students. So we just kind of never really got on that corporate
Yeah.
path model. And so we had to figure out an alternative way. And that way was through the trades. And so
Yeah.
we had a natural aptitude to work in the trades and we built that, handyman construction company and ran it out of that garage.
Yeah, nice, nice. I was exactly opposite. I was the kid that was good at tests and looking back at it, I wish I was more handy. My wife's like, "Hey, Brian, can you fix this?" I'm like, "No, I can't." It's just like I wish I could, So, I mean, yeah, that's one thing that I've never had a knack for, and I've always wished that I did. But and then yeah, taking that entrepreneurial path from the beginning, once again, 18, 19, 20-year-old Brian, was more interested in safety and security. And I think if you look at where you are at right now versus where I was at when I was, how old are you now? 30-ish?
34.
34. Yeah. You're probably light years ahead for that reason by itself. But let's talk progression here and kind of focusing on the real estate investment side. How did things go from there?
So this is 2008, 9, 10, 11. And for anyone who remembers that time, there was a lot of inventory on the market and basically all markets, so there was a lot of investment opportunities in real estate, but there was not a lot of capital in the
Mhm.
markets. And so being 18 and 20 years old, me and my brother having no W-2 income and being in the depths of a financial crisis, no bank was lending to us, but we
Yeah.
wanted to continue to buy. So we were buying some pretty rough homes that needed a lot of work, but we were willing to substitute our lack of capital at the time for sweat equity. So we had to buy these houses cash. We had to renovate them cash. And
Mm-hmm.
for the first 2 years, we did our first 8 houses over 2 years, did it all cash.
Mm-hmm.
And then we talk about inflection points or tipping points in our journey. After those 2 years, we found a little local bank that was willing to give us a 60% blanket financed loan on that portfolio of rentals. And that was a big point in our career because it was like, man, this worked, right? We had forced appreciation into these assets. We had put in all this energy for 2 years, working nights and weekends after we were working on someone else's home. And, the properties appraised well. We were able to borrow, pull out a decent amount of equity from these things. And the wise decision we made, and I'm so glad we did this, being 20 and
Yeah.
very young, is we went and bought 10 more houses rather than, go buy something we shouldn't have. And
Yeah.
so that's when we began to start to use leverage. The market started to loosen up, but there was still a lot of inventory there. So we spent the next, say, 5 years building up that portfolio of single families and small multis doing the same exact strategy.
Nice, nice. So, I mean, I guess at first trying to think, relate this to Burr, but since you guys were using cash, you weren't putting debt on there until later. So now with the cash thing, I mean, what types of properties were you buying? Give us an idea of, I don't know what the market looks like in Cincinnati as far as purchase prices, but I mean, were you guys buying distressed assets? What type of things were you actually buying, and what were the price points on that?
So those first 8 that we're talking about, these are heavily distressed single family houses, bank owned foreclosures that were on the MLS.
Mhm.
So price point would be like an acquisition from anywhere from like 25 to 50,000, excluding the free labor. We would probably put another 20 to 25,000 in renovations into these properties.
Mhm.
And the way we were earning that capital was by going and doing, a high-end kitchen or bathroom or addition on someone's home, turning
Mhm.
around and then reinvesting that into these single family homes. I don't want to get too far down our journey, but those, say, $25,000 to $50,000 homes, we exited those in 2020. Most of them were at price points of like the 150 to 200 range. So that was like the appreciation that the market saw during that time frame. It was the entry level first time homeowner product.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Interesting. Now, you said you exited a lot of them. Do you still own any of those, or have you sold all of them?
So our story can be broken kind of into 2 parts. So the first 8 years, we were using only our own capital. We were not raising money from investors. We were just forcing appreciation,
Yeah.
stripping that equity, redeploying it and snowballing. We built up a sizable portfolio of single families and small multis. And then ultimately that whole portfolio was sold in 2020. And so when interest rates fell during COVID, first time home buyers just flooded the market, and
Yeah.
our product was perfect for that. And so we just said, sell 8 of them every month for multiple months,
Mhm.
and just divested of that. But
Mhm.
really the reason is because 2015, we started buying larger apartment
Mhm.
communities, and we had been growing that for about 5 years. We're vertically integrated. So we're running our own management company, and it felt like we were running 2 businesses, right? So
Yeah.
single family, small multis compared to large on-site operations. And so it was nice to sell off the small stuff, focus on building our systems and processes around one core business, which is mid-sized to large multifamily assets.
Well, since you ended on that note, let's start talking about that, the shift from that single family to multifamily. So walk us through kind of where you guys were at when you decided to make that switch
Mhm.
and reasons why.
So we had built up the portfolio, and it was buying, this
Mhm.
house or that house or this duplex, this quad, and every single renovation process and every single lease up and just operating that asset is different, right? So because they're all different, they're built by different builders, built in different vintages. And so we understood we like systems and processes because our overall investment philosophy is on consistent, predictable cash flow. And so if we want consistent, predictable cash flow, it'd be great to be able to do consistent, predictable renovations and consistent, predictable leasing and consistent, predictable maintenance. So that all flows back to the cash flow. And so we started looking at larger communities, but as you know, larger communities cost more. And we said we wanted to do the first one with our own funds to just test the business model. So the first apartment community we bought was a 42 unit property built in 1990, pretty well maintained, but just dated interiors. So it was kind of like an easy entry for us. And it was a $2.1 million purchase. We were able to get the funds for that. We said we need to generate some cash, and we weren't selling off our existing portfolio. So we did 15 flips just to
Mhm.
generate the cash to then buy this apartment community, which we did. No investors. We proved out that we really like this model, that we could benefit from the economies of scale and the consistency within the renovations. And then we
Mhm.
shifted into the syndication model to go buy larger apartment communities.
Awesome. Awesome. So with those 15 flips, I assume you guys had some debt on it as well.
Most of
It had
them,
to be 15 really big flips, I think, to hit 2.1.
this 2.1 was the purchase price of the
Yeah.
apartment building, which we used leverage. So I think like our,
Got it.
we needed about 500,000. And so on those flips, we weren't hiring many vendors. We were the guys swinging the hammer and painting it and
Yep.
doing everything. So the cash coming off the deals were high because we weren't paying ourselves to do the actual labor.
Yeah.
And so that was enough to generate that, $500,000 that we needed to buy that apartment
Sweet.
community.
Now, I mean, since you guys were doing most of the labor on your other projects, did you guys tackle all the labor on this apartment complex as well?
No, at that time we had probably 150 units. The
Mhm.
property management company that we were building up underneath us to service our assets was starting to get enough revenue to support some staff. So it might have been, I don't know, at the time, might have been a leasing agent and a maintenance person.
Mhm.
And then we could almost GC or general contract our turnovers while we were overseeing them. That's probably what that looked like in about 2015. Fast
Mhm.
forward to today, we have 50 employees and we have all of our property management internal and we have our construction internal. So we have, employees that handle all of our turnovers and the construction arm of our business. But around that time, yeah, we were just getting to the point where we could start hiring out some of the responsibilities of the operations.
Awesome. Awesome. Yeah, that's pretty amazing how that works out. So you bought your first one using your own money, did a bunch of flips to create the revenue to purchase it. And then after that, I mean, you alluded to, starting to syndicate after that. So let's walk through that process as well. How'd that first syndication go compared to what you guys were previously doing?
So me and my brother had built the company up, and then around 2015, our partner today named Coleman, we met
Mhm.
at a networking event. He kind of said, I love what you guys are doing. You have a skill set that I don't have in the trades.
Yep.
His formal education, he's got a master's degree in accounting. He's a CPA. He worked for a big real estate firm doing their investor reporting. And he came to us and said, I'll work for you guys for free for a year just to get to know how you do what you do. And then I'm going to go do my own thing. And so we said, great, we don't make that much money. So it'd be awesome to have an accountant on our team for
Yeah.
free. So we said yes, but over that year, we realized that we had very complementary skill sets
Mhm.
but we also viewed life and investments very similar. So it was a great dynamic. And we said, hey, why don't we, instead of you go do your own thing, why don't we work together? So we ended up going through like a vesting period where he ended
Mhm.
up owning the portfolio that we had built, but also was equal partners on anything moving forward.
Mhm.
And so he brought in that skill set of investor reporting and finance that we didn't have. And so we wanted to continue to buy larger. Those
Mhm.
assets obviously cost more money. We saw an
Yeah.
opportunity to add value to the investors who had expressed interest to us over the years and seen our successes. And so we went back to them. And the first syndication, it wasn't all that sophisticated. It was a real syndication. We, filed the correct docs and hired a securities attorney. But I took it out to one investor to get feedback on the offering memorandum. And he said, if you take half, I'll take half. And so that ended up just being that we took half of the limited partnership and he took half of the limited partnership. So it wasn't much of a syndication, but got our foot in the door, got us building out that arm of our business of quarterly reporting, producing the systems in place to manage investors.
I'm glad that it worked for you. I have a lot of people that said they would work for me for free and try to get into the business that way. But amazing, that's never worked out for me yet. So glad it worked out for you guys. So from there, let's walk through progression into bigger and bigger deals to where you're at now with 50 plus employees and everything else going on.
Yeah, our business model has not changed all that much, Brian. Like it's the same thing, just larger. So what we do is we buy distressed assets, and that distress comes in the form of either construction or property management, usually a combination of both. We go in, we force appreciation, we improve the property's operations, we make them worth more, we strip the equity out to a reasonable leverage. We continue to own that deal, and then we redeploy into something else. So like the same model that I described back from 2008, 9, 10 is really what we're doing today. It's just now we do it in 100 plus unit apartment communities and partner with passive investors to do that.
Mhm. Okay. Awesome. 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 So going from here, into the future, what's future look like for you guys?
Yeah, I get this question, and with 50 employees, my role is to look forward into the future and create clarity for them. And one thing that I haven't done that I think is normal in our industry is I don't direct our acquisitions on this many units of growth, like apartment units, or this much revenue growth. What I say is we're going to do these processes to try to align ourselves with acquisitions within our market.
Mhm.
And if we do all of those things and it results in no acquisitions, that's totally okay. But if we do them and it results in, say, one a month, that's okay too, because we've built up the operational efficiency systems and processes to handle those acquisitions. So I really don't know what the future holds. I'm really happy with
Yeah.
where our portfolio is right now. It's
Mhm.
given me a lot of what I was looking for when I started this business.
Okay.
And so I'm patient on acquisitions and buying what makes sense to me when it makes sense. But if that means we don't buy anything for another 2 years, that's okay too.
Yeah. I was talking with somebody else today about, what seems to be a conundrum, people who are trying to run a business in a very cyclical market, where it may not be a good time to invest right now, but I love how you said it. Hey, we have our processes, this is how we do things. This is when we buy. And if the market's not right, you don't buy. But if you continue to do your processes, you end up buying one a month, even better. So I do like that you brought that up because I think there a lot of people in your shoes would probably be itching to close on another one and another one and another one.
Yeah,
So
I feel very fortunate at right where we're at and where the market is. And let me explain that. Like, if I remember having 400 units, right? Like, there wasn't enough revenue to support the organizational chart that bought me the freedom of the day-to-day operations that I was wanting, right? And so if I was at 400 units today, I would feel more pressure to acquire to try to get to, the 1,000+ units that supports the staff that buys the freedom that I was looking for. On the other hand, if you have 10,000, 20,000 units and you have a whole overhead of investor relations and acquisitions teams and a whole corporate staff that's using a bunch of payroll that you need to service,
yeah,
both of those parties are kind of forced to move. And I'm in this middle ground where I can say, I don't have that acquisitions investor relations overhead, but I do have the operational support staff. And so I can be patient right now. And it's not to say any of those are right or wrong. I'm just very fortunate that it timed out this way for me.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, hey, thanks for sharing that. Very much appreciated. Now, perhaps the most important question of the entire podcast, if you were to give advice to somebody who is getting ready to jump into apartment investing as a syndicator, what would that advice be?
So my answer would be different if they're raising money or not raising. So I'll assume this person is jumping in and they're going to raise money from outside investors. And Brian, you've probably seen this, but I think that syndication and raising money is far too popular. And so the word of advice that I would give this person is please keep in mind that anytime you're raising capital, the responsibility that comes with that. And how I would frame that up in someone's mind that's considering this is if you think about someone working at a corporate job, how many hours, days, years they trade to earn the capital that they are going to entrust to you as a syndicator. You're working with a portion of a person's life because they traded a portion of their life to earn that capital. And so you should hold it to that regard. You should be astute enough with what you're going into before you raise capital. Because you
Yeah,
think about us as a society, how hard will we work and what length will we go to and what dollars will we spend to save someone's life for another year, right?
yeah.
Like all things we will do. And
Mhm.
yet we will borrow what someone traded 10 years of their life for and, throw it to a whim. And
Yeah.
so I would just issue a word of caution to anyone considering being a general partner in a syndication and the responsibility that that brings.
Okay. Now, how can they learn that? It is a big responsibility to take other people's money. And you obviously, want to be good stewards of other people's money, definitely not lose other people's money and hopefully give them good returns. But Are there shortcuts? Are there any ways that they could potentially do it faster?
Well, I think it's more of acknowledging that if things don't go as planned, what are you willing to do to protect what they have entrusted you with? Right.
Perfect.
So, like, I think knowing that it doesn't mean it has to be hard or you can't just jump in, but you have to know what are you willing to sacrifice to make sure this goes well.
Yeah.
And so, if it is going sideways, are you willing to step up to that responsibility by doing whatever is needed? Right. Like,
Yeah.
so are you willing to go on site and try to help this operations get to where they need to be to produce the results you're after? But that leads me to maybe my second, you asked for one, but the second piece
Yeah.
of advice would always be financial returns, which is what everybody cares about when they listen to these podcasts, are supported by on-site operations. And my advice would be that a lot of people also miss that on-site operations are supported by the people who work there.
Mhm.
And so maybe how do you be a good steward is like you think about those components, right?
Yeah.
If you don't understand on-site operations or how to lead people, you probably won't get the upstream benefit of the financial returns. And so
Mhm.
you might want to hit pause and think about that a little bit more before you start raising money.
Yeah, yeah, good points, good points. It's easy, and I think I see a lot of people kind of fall prey to this. It's easy to post on, LinkedIn or other social media, hey, I just bought a lot of apartments, but I would say it's easier to buy apartments than it is to manage them in most cases.
Yeah.
So yeah, judging by that facial expression, I think you agree on that one. It's easier to buy them than it is to manage them, but and managing that's where you make the money. But anyway, thanks for sharing your story and advice. Last question I have for you, and that's this: how can listeners learn more about you?
Best place would be our website. So it's snscapitalgroup.com.
Awesome. And we're going to put a link to that in the show notes. So that said, Jered, thanks for coming on the show today. Very much appreciate your time.
Yeah, Brian, thank you again. Appreciate it.